In this episode of This Week in MMA, we went out for donairs, enjoyed ourselves, recapped the weekend that was, and we've got all sorts of great stuff coming up. So, please join us for This Week in MMA. Alright, and welcome to another episode of This Week in MMA. As always, you can find me on Twitter at CraigAllenFNP. You can find Matt at MattAllenFNP. And you know what? We had a great weekend of fights. We also enjoyed some donairs recapping those fights. So looking forward to that one a little bit later on. Also this weekend, we've got a couple of really great cards in addition to UFC. So of course, you've got one championship, Enter the Dragon, that's taking place later on in the week. You've also got KSW 49. It's a totally stacked card, as well as, and we will get into it in quite a bit of detail, you've got UFC Fight Night on ESPN Plus number 10, which is a mouthful of a name, but
it's a weak one.
RDA taking on Kevin Lee. Yeah, a bit of a weaker, event that they have coming up, but an enjoyable one nonetheless, one that we're definitely looking forward to. So, we had a great weekend. UFC 237, you had Bellator 221, Chicago, Brazil. The fighters came out to fight. They showed up, plenty of finishes. So, without further ado, let's get into the breakdown from this past weekend.
Matt, we've been off. It's been a bit of a hiatus, really, but we're back again.
Yes.
And you know what? We could have had a better weekend in MMA. You had a double booking on the same night. We've been critical in the past of what the UFC and Bellator have done. I mean, typically in the past, you usually see Bellator coming out with their schedule a little bit earlier on than the UFC. But nonetheless, Bellator 221 coming at you from the Allstate Arena in Chicago, Illinois. You also had UFC 237 from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Overall, I mean, looking back at it after the fact, if you had to not just give, letter grades, but which was the better card in your opinion?
Honestly, they were kind of on par excitement-wise, I find, but just the fact that one was a pay-per-view and the one was on free TV, I mean, it kind of pushes Bellator over the edge. Especially, I'm really invested in this whole welterweight Grand Prix. I really do think who the winner of this welterweight Grand Prix is honestly the best welterweight on planet Earth, whether it's a motivated Rory McDonald or Douglas Lima, who, I mean, he just finishes everybody with, submission, knockout, doesn't matter how. He tends to beat them in pretty brutal fashion, so... honestly, I probably had more fun watching the Bellator card of the two. Controversy and all, especially with the main event, but two good cards. It was just a really good weekend for combat sports, really.
Yeah, and I mean, I would have to agree. I would pick Bellator over the UFC card simply because if you're in the States, you have to get that ESPN Plus subscription, then you have to pay for the pay-per-view. If you're following along with Bellator, maybe not free TV this time around. Card obviously on DAZN, but still much cheaper option than the UFC card. Now, if we had to focus on some of the fights from that UFC card, maybe a couple of different retirements, what were some of the fights that piqued your interest?
Okay, I guess we'll have to kind of highlight low light for pique your interest. I mean, low light definitely was BJ Penn just fighting, really. I mean, he's got there's currently a lawsuit going on. He's got a restraining order from his wife. It's not to the same capacity of Tony Ferguson was going through his problems, but it was more one of those things of okay, I need help. I'm going to go out and look for it. BJ Penn just kind of been on this downward spiral, and it's really interesting. I was listening to people talk. If you remember the way that Dana White used to talk about BJ Penn, it was always oh, we like BJ to be active because we know he kind of gets in trouble when he's not. And now we kind of know why he used to say all those things. With BJ not being as active in recent years and with just losing for, I guess it's been 9 years since he's had a win, we kind of know what BJ Penn does when he's not fighting, and that's kind of get up to no good, which is unfortunate because, I mean, talent-wise, and this was before either one of us followed the sport, but just to hear the way that people talk about how BJ Penn was in his prime, he'd fight anyone. He fought Lyoto at heavyweight. He was your welterweight champ, your lightweight champ. He looked unstoppable. And then just to kind of see the shell of himself, who they still allow to fight, which is really unfortunate. At some point, the promotion has to step in.
And I mean, a guy that now owns the UFC's longest losing streak, 7 in a row, hasn't had a win in the longest time. I mean, I've seen graphics where Rose Namajunas, who was your champion Saturday night, at one point, was still in high school. The last name BJ Penn got a win.
Her whole career has been within the time that he's had.
It's hard to kind of believe that, wrap your head around it if you're an old school MMA fan. So a crazy, kind of fight there. Clay Guida throwing all sorts of looping shots. Nothing really found a home, but he did eke out a win there. You also had Ryan Spann, who took on Lil Nog, and that was a tough one.
I don't think Lil Nog actually looked terrible, though. You know what I mean? Like, I know he got knocked out in the first round, which was the worst thing that could happen. It was a beautiful uppercut that did kind of finish. He hit him with that right hand, and he did the lead uppercut. It was a really nice sequence, but, I mean, Lil Nog was landing good shots up until that point. I don't know if he wobbled Span, but there was one right hand left hook that definitely kind of, like, stood Span up a little bit. So I wouldn't put Lil Nog in the same category that I put BJ Penn. Do I think he should still fight? Probably not, if I'm being completely honest. But he can still have competitive fights. I mean, he just knocked out Sam Alvey not that long ago. So I really don't think that this is the end of the road. Maybe a guy like Jean Vellante could be a guy who could fight in the future. I don't think he's ever going to be champion again. We'll probably never see him in the top 15 again, which is unfortunate. Like, you hate to say that about these legends, especially like Anderson Silva, who I'm still a fan of. And he still has, like, when Silva fights, you're still like, oh, maybe he can do it. He probably can't. He's 44. He's riddled with injuries. It's not the same guy anymore, and it's just unfortunate to see these guys in the later part of their career still competing.
So, 3 more big fights, and there's all sorts of fights on that card if you get a chance to go back.
I mean, the main event was phenomenal, too.
Early prelims were great, but kind of the next big fight on the docket, Alexander Volkanovski taking on Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo at that time ranked number 1 at featherweight, and it just kind of, maybe not a decline of Jose Aldo, but the fact that Alexander Volkanovski kind of fought the Kamaru Usman type of fight where his output just went up. Kind of like a Jeremy Stevens, if you give him that time. Alexander Volkanovski in rounds 2 and rounds 3 really poured it on. So for him, what's next from Volkanovski?
I mean, and I've seen a lot of people kind of go out and say it. You would think that the next big pay-per-view that they do, they're going to do Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker, with the co-main event being Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski. Those are 2 tremendous fights, and I think that would sell quite well. I would favor Max Holloway in that fight just because he's definitely at a different level than what Jose Aldo is now. But Jose didn't look that bad. Like, I don't think this is done for Jose Aldo. He came out, he had an Instagram post today, and he was just saying, like, no excuses, Volkanovski fought the perfect fight. But Aldo felt like that was the worst he's ever fought in his life, including the Holloway fights, including the McGregor fights. So maybe it was just a fact of Aldo didn't look that great, Volkanovski looked good. I would favor Volkanovski in a rematch, but it was one of those fights where you look for that one big counter shot, and if it never comes, you're always going to lose the decision. But let's say Aldo in the second round checked a kick and threw a right hand or something and knocked Volkanovski out. That's what we'd be talking about. But I just feel like it wasn't the best game plan from Aldo, and it was a really good performance from Volkanovski, who I'm really high on. I mean, he's definitely the next Brian Ortega, if you will, like one of these prospects who just ran through everybody.
17-fight win streak, something insane that you rarely see in MMA.
He's got power, he's got wrestling, he's got cardio, he's got output. Like, he's got all the things you look for when you look for a future world champion. The only negative is he has to fight Max Holloway for that world title.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the only thing you could say. And in the co-main event of the night, you had Jared Cannonier kind of come out of nowhere. He was decent at 205, but drops down to 185, starts as David Branch, comes into this fight against Anderson Silva, which to me is kind of a lesser opponent.
It's weird matchmaking.
It really is, but he's taking on Anderson Silva, a legend in Brazil and of the sport as well, one of the, obviously Hall of Famer, one of the best of all time to do it. But Cannonier comes in, just tossing leg kicks. And Anderson Silva, they said there was maybe a leg issue in his camp. Just kind of takes one. No surgery required after the fight. Realistically, to me, it doesn't really raise Jared Cannonier's stock all that much.
It really doesn't. It was unfortunate to see him just get brutally booed after the fight. It makes sense. You're in Brazil. You just beat a Brazilian. But, it's weird matchmaking because at this point of Anderson Silva's career, you want to give him legacy fights, or you want him to fight these next level prospects who you think are going to be the next big star, like Israel Adesanya. And I saw a lot of people actually come out and say Anderson losing to Cannonier hurts Israel's stock. I couldn't disagree more. I mean, Jared Cannonier didn't go out there and beat the brakes off Kelvin Gastelum.
No,
they're very different levels. But for Jared Cannonier, you don't really know what's next. You would think maybe a guy like Chris Weidman, who's been on kind of a losing streak, if you will. I know he won 2 fights ago, but I mean, he's lost 4 of his last 5 all by knockout. So maybe that could be an interesting fight. I would favor Weidman in it, even though he's on the decline. But just a fight like that, I don't think this springboards him into the top of the division, but it definitely has earned him another top 15, top 10 fight for sure.
100% was ranked 15th going into the night, so or rather ranked 10th going into the night. So yeah, you would hope a step up in competition there. And then in your main event, Rose Namajunas, Jessica Andrade. I had a number of beers watching Bellator. I had just gotten home. I was checking Twitter on that main, and everyone was saying Rose first round decisively. She looked great. So I turned the TV back on, and of course, you get a crazy finish where Andrade was caught in a submission, picks Rose up, slams her on her head. And a lot of people on Twitter saying that, hey, slams, maybe they shouldn't be legal in MMA. Go watch a grappling match. Go watch a BJJ competition. No. You can't slam in those. MMA is a place for the slams. It definitely has its place in MMA.
I just mean,
and a great finish and a great champion. And I think she's going to be at the top of that division for quite some time.
I think her and Tatiana Suarez are going to trade that title quite a few times, for being honest. But it's really weird how, like, us as MMA fans, we love a sport where people get kicked in the head, kneed in the head. Like, there's some brutal stuff that happens every single night, but for some reason we're drawing a line on slams.
So, UFC 237, a lot of people are going to look at it as a pay-per-view, bigger card on the weekend, but you also had Bellator 221. Started a little bit earlier on the night, and plenty of good fights on that card. That main card was absolutely stacked. I mean, you had big fights out of AJ McKee taking on Pat Curran. You had Jake Hager making a second start with the promotion, taking on TJ Jones, cult hero.
Taiwan
Claxton to open up the pay-per-view, and a great performance by him. And, of course, in that main event, co-main event, MVP taking on Douglas Lima, and then in your main, Michael Chandler taking on the one and only Patricio Freire, Pitbull, as everyone likes to know him. So, let's back it up. First fight of the night, Taiwan Claxton. It was less about the opponent and more about a future star.
Yeah.
Taiwan Claxton's wrestling, I mean, people will give you, a hard time about, well, Division 2, Division 3 wrestling.
Division 2.
Yeah. Taiwan Claxton, Division 2 All-American. This guy looks like the real deal at 45. And, I mean, he just put on a clinic in that fight.
And a lot of people remember him from that crazy flying knee in his debut. And he's definitely got amazing striking, but his wrestling is just so much better than most people's. That's why it allows him to kind of open up with the strikes, because he's not afraid of being taken down himself. The chances of him being taken down are slim to none at this point. And it really seems like Taiwan Claxton could be that next Aaron Pico who gets kind of that promotional push. He's one of these prospects. He can do everything. He speaks well. He's got the look. I mean, Taiwan Claxton's really got to look out for in that 145 division.
And a good thing to mention, too, so that crazy flying knee knockout that he was able to get, he tried to replicate it, and he turned the flying knee into a takedown.
It's amazing.
It was more or less a judo throw where he just grabbed him and threw him at the same time. So, great fight out of him. Next fight on the night, you had the Jake Hager fight, taking on TJ Jones, a man who wakes up at 4 a.m., has 6 kids, works at a meatpacking plant. I mean, he's pretty much Joe Fighter. And it was a great fight out of him. He did the most that he could with the opportunity he was given.
Yeah.
After the fight, Scott Cochran, we'll pull the tweet up, basically said, who wants to see TJ Jones compete for the promotion? J.W. Kaiser, who was Hager's last opponent, came out and said, yeah, I want to fight TJ Jones. And listen, I'm all for it. I think it's great. It's great marketing, but it's great for TJ Jones. Gives him a kind of a spot to shine.
Yeah, exactly.
For Jake Hager, star goes down because it was absolute horse doo-doo what he did at the end of that fight. I mean, you can't hold a choke that long.
No, I mean, the guy tapped out. He would have felt that on his shoulder. And I know a lot of people, they wait for the ref to come break it up. But the ref was, trying to break them apart.
And it's your biggest referee.
Yeah, Mike Beltran's big boy. So, yeah, it was dumb. It didn't make a lot of sense. I know he was fired up after the fight, as he said in his post-fight.
The man had an erection.
He did. He was rock hard. And even though he beat a guy who barely fights. But still, yeah, his start doesn't really go anyways. I don't know who you matchmake him with at this point, because it just seems like they're pulling guys from the regional circuit. But, yeah, not really a whole lot to say about that fight.
The next fight, AJ McKee taking on Pat Curran.
That was a one-sided ass whooping.
Let me say this. Pat Curran hit a takedown in the second round. AJ McKee went down. And one of the neat things you might not have noticed on camera, all of a sudden McKee, bam, I'm going to strikes from the bottom. We remarked when we were watching it with a group of friends, hey, kind of looks like Bisping against GSP, and Bisping was able to cut up St. Pierre in that one. So you see McKee automatically throws a couple shots, looks over to his corner and says something, and then just goes berserk and throws as many shots as he can. Didn't really need that to get the win, but man, did AJ McKee look good or what? And for the featherweight Grand Prix coming up later on this year, he's got to be an odds-on favorite to win it.
He would be. And now they're kind of almost setting up that fight between him and Pico, with Pico going down to Jackson way, which would be a phenomenal fight between two prospects. Pico would go to sleep.
I don't think that fight would happen simply because they were teammates, but you never know.
The only reason I say that is because they asked AJ McKee about Pico leaving, and he says loyalty is royalty, and we really value that a lot at the gym. So it was almost kind of like this subtle shout-out at Aaron Pico. But anyways, it'd be an interesting fight. And like we said, Bellator's 145 division is just booming with prospects. All their top 15 is under 30 for the most part. Just a lot of really good, young, talented guys, and I can't wait for that Grand Prix. It's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, great fight out of McKee in the co-main. Great fight between MVP Douglas Lima. First round could have gone either way. It was close. It was more or less Lima kind of figuring him out, letting MVP kind of show what he had. In the second round, you saw that sweep of the leg, followed up by one of the most vicious uppercuts that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And we kind of alluded to it before, but Douglas Lima, at this point in the tournament, with what happened to Rory McDonald, the majority draw against John Fitch, Douglas Lima is either going to fight Naaman Gracie or Rory McDonald, and chances are it's McDonald. But really, Lima, it's Lima's title to lose.
It really is. I mean, Douglas Lima is almost like Bellator's Justin Gaethje. If you like violence, you should watch Douglas Lima fight. A lot of guys, he either knocks you out or he's going to drop you, take your back, and then strangle you. It is terrifying to watch. He's 31 years old. He's got a whole lot of fights for how old he is. I mean, 31 for welterweight's not even that old, because I was kind of flirting with the idea of could he ever come to the UFC in his prime, and I do think that that's a realistic thing that could happen. I mean, welterweights generally last till like 35, 36, so we're just starting to see kind of peak Douglas Lima these past few performances, even though he was champ for a while before.
And one of those neat things to look at, too, his wins aren't split, overwhelmingly 80% knockout, 20% submission. It's split quite evenly.
It's like 15 knockouts, 13 submission, 5 decisions.
Which is what you want to see out of a guy like that. So sky's the limit for Lima, even at this point in his career where he's already been champ a number of times.
And I really like his training now, too. He does most of his training at ATT in Florida, which is, again, one of the best gyms in the world. But then he goes to Thailand, and that's where he does all his strength. So basically, he's getting the best training in the world.
Another Brazilian fighter that has spent quite a bit of time in Thailand, and if you're watching Kumite TV with John, you can have a look. Johnny Walker, another one of those guys that, you see fighters do it. They'll go over to Thailand, they'll try and get that training, but they'll only go for a week, or they'll only go for 2 weeks. It's kind of a notch in your belt. You're not really going to gain much for skills, but guys that continually do it, guys and the women fighters as well, Chris Cyborg, she's done it before. So all sorts of different fighters doing it. Douglas Lima, best of the best, top of the top. And I will say this, moving forward and in your main, you had Michael Chandler, who, kind of like a Douglas Lima, he's been champ a number of times, beat Brent Primus to get his belt back, kind of solidified himself as a true lightweight champion. Taking on Patricio Pitbull, rather Patricky in attendance. This one was kind of bad blood written all over it. We know what happened.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the stoppage?
I don't think it was a great stoppage, but I don't think it was a bad stoppage. I think the best way that I can describe it was, I forget the name of the guy who Ben Saunders just fought, but he lost by knockout in the second round. And a lot of people thought it was the early stoppage until Ben Saunders got up to his feet and he couldn't get his legs under him and he kind of wobbled across the cage and fell down again. And this was very similar. If that stoppage is okay, that we have to wait until after the stoppage to see how he is, if Ben Saunders had jumped right up, we would have said, it's an early stoppage. But the way he reacted afterwards would have indicated that it wasn't. And I feel like this is a lot of the same. I mean, Michael Chandler admitted to himself, he got hit with a good shot right behind the ear. Doesn't matter who you are, how good or how bad your chin is. You go down.
Just like the Ngannou Velasquez.
Exactly.
It was a joke between friends, the knees gave out. Which came first. But Chandler got rocked just behind the ear. He goes down, 4 or 5 unanswered shots.
Exactly.
And as soon as referee Rob Madrigal steps in, is when Chandler gets up. I mean, the fight was over. I think it was a good, decision to stop the fight.
Again, I don't think it was a good one, but I don't think it was a bad one. I think
fine
it was an
with
okay
it.
decision.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Kind of lost in the fray of the entire evening. You had 2 different, big events, lots of great fights, lots of good finishes. The fact that Freire is champ. Not a lot of people focused on that.
And you know what the crazy thing is? He has mentioned in the past that he could easily drop down to 135. So he basically had a guy who could be bantamweight just knock out the lightweight champion. Like, it's absurd. And I know his brother kind of gets flack that, like, him and his brother have kind of the same fighting style, but he's so much better. Like,
yeah, his brother Patricky, a lot of power shots, a lot of plant and stand and throw. Whereas Patricio's, a lot more well-rounded, will throw a lot more in volume, too.
Fast.
And, doesn't have to get the win by knockout either, whereas that's more of his brother's thing.
Exactly.
So, great card overall. If we're going to give them letter grades like we do at Fight Night Picks, rocking the shirt, you can find it at fightnightpicks.net. As far as UFC 237 was concerned, after the fact, letter grade, what would you give it?
I'd say like a B- or a B. It wasn't the best pay-per-view I've ever seen. It wasn't the worst pay-per-view I've ever seen. There's only some fights that stand out compared to others. I'd say maybe a B-, C+, around that.
I think that's totally fair. I mean, there were some of these legacy fights that didn't really turn out all that great for the legacy fighters. Brazilians didn't quite show up.
Thiago Alves won, by the way.
Yeah, Thiago Alves against Starpoli. Yeah, that's a tough one, especially in Brazil. You're taking on the Argentinian.
Yeah.
You got to get those bragging rights, and judges just didn't want to pick the right decision.
You would
I guess
think as a Brazilian in Brazil, it would be hard to lose this close decision.
So to me, I'm gonna go along the same line, C+, B-. But as far as Bellator 221. I'm going to give you my pick right now. It was an A. It was a solid A. And I will say Bellator did a great job with the build-up to the fight. They had the different countdowns that they do every now and again. You had your welterweight Grand Prix going into the semis. You had a brand new production company coming in for the entrances, for the lighting and the sound. And I heard a lot of great things, especially Brad Risk, MMA, Bellator MMA News on Facebook. Make sure you go follow them. But everybody had a great time, and some of those production value and production elements might not show through television, but if you're there and you're butt in the seat actually enjoying it, they did a great job. So an A for Bellator, a stacked card. Even the prelims were really good. The post-lim fights, I mean, we were talking about it earlier. Adil Benjelani taking on Chris Lencioni getting the win. He's another one of those guys that was a highly touted prospect. Haven't heard about him as much as they were, kind of pushing him before, but overall, a great card, in my opinion.
Yeah, I find that hard to disagree with. I mean, I would say probably voted A. We saw a lot of really good performances, a lot of finishes, exactly what people were looking for. It was a phenomenal card by Bellator.
Yeah.
Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Head on over to the website, strikeforceenergy.com. If you enjoy the flavor of freedom, the company's veteran-owned and everything's made in America. They've got great apparel. You can turn any 16.9-ounce beverage into an energy drink. There's no sugar, no calories, no stirring, or no shaking required. They also have a line of different products as well as Strikeforce coffee. So if I head into my cart, I've got a 4-count sample pack. I've got a 20-ounce coffee mug. And if I head into that checkout, use the promo code FNP, click to apply, and you're going to save 20% off any order. That's FNP at strikeforceenergy.com. All right, and a great weekend that it was. We definitely enjoyed the fights that we had. And special shout out and thanks again to New England Pizza. Great donairs. So if you're in Fredericton, you get a chance to stop by. Pretty good stuff. Regional food. They claim it's better in Nova Scotia, but here in New Brunswick, they know how to do it as well.
Not bad.
The newest segment to the show, we've added it in. It's time for the Twitter Purge.
It's time for the Twitter Purge.
All right, and in this week's Twitter Purge, we're going to start it off with that main event, a tweet by Barstool's own Robbie Fox, in all caps, Jessica Andrade slammed Rose Namajunas. We covered it extensively, but Matt, was that the TSN turning point? Do you think Jessica Andrade is going to go on for a long title reign at the top of the strawweight division?
It really depends on how many times that she defends her title until she fights Tatiana Suarez. I really do think Suarez is the future of that division. I think she's going to beat everyone just with wrestling and her grappling. But until she fights Suarez, and even if she does, there's a very good chance she knocks her out. But Andrade's going to be at the top of that division for a very long time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think she will as well. A lot of enthusiasm by a lot of different fans, and really enjoyed that, of course. So, great main event that we had in the UFC. I threw it out there on Twitter in purpose of having this tweet up on the board. Best pound for pound women's MMA fighter currently with the UFC. An overwhelming majority, almost 150 participants, went with Amanda Nunes, 77% behind that. You had Shevchenko, then Chris Cyborg, then Andrade. There are a few other names that were thrown into the hat. Rose Namajunas. You agree that Amanda Nunes is number one pound for pound women's fighter in the UFC?
I don't think it's an argument at all. She's beat two of the... Well, she has 3 wins over the women in that poll, so there's no doubt. And you can say, oh, well, I thought Shevchenko won. I mean, you can think the Earth's flat. Doesn't mean that it's true. So, with Nunes, she beat Tate. She beat Shevchenko twice. She beat Ronda. She's beaten everyone. So, I don't think it's an argument at all. Amanda Nunes is the women GOAT.
Yeah, and I agree as well. Some other news that came out, and this is called the Twitter Purge,
Instagram purge.
I can't afford to have an Instagram purge as well. But Tom Duquesnoy announcing his retirement at the age of 25. What's next for the Fire Kid?
Probably just do modeling and not get hit in the head. That's really the only reason I can come up with.
Hey, I mean, I can look sad and do poses.
You can, but...
Hire me. You can see it in the thumbnail. Maybe I have a future in modeling. Most likely
For
not.
sure doesn't, though.
A guy that may have a future in a big promotion. TJ Jones.
Nice try with the segue.
We talked about it quite a bit, but TJ Jones really showed up to fight against Jake Hager. He had one point where Hager went for an early takedown. He kind of threw him into the cage, but of course Hager got the takedown, and the rest is history. But Scott Coker put it out there. TJ Jones has spirit. Who wants to see him get a second shot in the Bellator MMA cage?
Why not?
Over 1,000 people liked it. You can see up top. I liked it and retweeted it. The kid's got heart. He's fighting for his family. He's doing great things. And I really think, you look at the prelims that they have for some of these Bellator cards. There's a lot of people that have, negative records.
Yeah, worse records than he does.
Have less than 5 fights. So I think they should keep him around.
Why not?
Hype train. Moving forward with the Twitter purge. Big fight announced on the weekend. Nate Diaz taking on Showtime Pettis at 170. First of all, are you surprised that this fight's going to be at 70 instead of 155?
Not at all, because you have two lightweights who don't like cutting weight, so I would just make them cut weight to have a fight. They're probably going to be better performance at 170. We saw Anthony Pettis in his last fight at 170. Flatline Wonderboy, who was like the number 4 ranked contender, I think.
Yep.
Nate's been away for a while. The last guy he fought was like a lightweight anyways. Him and Anthony are pretty similar size-wise too, but if Nate Diaz doesn't learn how to check a leg kick, he's going to get lit the F up by Anthony Pettis.
Yeah, right now, as far as it's concerned, I would be taking Pettis to win this fight. Just the fact
knock
that
him out too.
He's continued to be active, and there was a point in the not-so-distant past
where
where
he fought Poirier and people thought he was done.
Yeah, a lot of people thought he was done, and there were a lot of people that didn't give up on him. So a great win over Wonderboy, and really looking forward to that Nate Diaz fight. And then the last little bit on the Twitter purge, and this is kind of something that's been going on over the last, 2
hours.
2 hours. So Deron Winn was supposed to be taking on Marcus Perez in his UFC debut. Matt and I have been high as all hell on Deron Winn.
Not really, but...
Can't wait to see him make his UFC debut. But he called out Gerald Meerschaert. Looked like Meerschaert basically said no to the challenge. Deron Winn went for the jugular, and maybe. But it looks like Gerald Meerschaert's not going to bite. I think it'd be a fun fight just because Wynn's...
I don't at all.
Wynn's wrestling's really good. Mm-hmm. Meerschaert's jiu-jitsu is really good. So it could end up in a few different places, more than likely on the mat. But it would be a fun fight for a UFC debut.
I think Meerschaert would beat him very easily. Darren Wynn's best win is a Tom Lawler who hadn't fought in 3 years.
Matt, ending the Twitter purge on a bit of a negative.
Jared Meerschaert's fought in UFC quite a few times. He's had some really good performances. Darren Wynn's just inexperienced. Like, I would give him a guy who has very low level of experience. I wouldn't throw him into... And I'm not saying Meerschaert's like a world beater, but still, you don't want to just throw him into a guy who's probably going to lose to in his first fight.
So we've got 3 really good fight cards coming up this weekend. Of course, you've got one championship on Friday. It's going to be one of those really, really early cards if you're in North America. A lot of intriguing fights. If you go up and down through the list on Tapology, one fight that hasn't really been changed is the fact that Mei Yamaguchi was originally intended to take on Bo Meng. That switched. She's going to be taking on Laura Ballin, who came out of retirement to fight. I believe it was for the strawweight title, if it wasn't for the flyweight. But it's a decent bit of matchmaking there. Yamaguchi, of course, won her last fight and looked great. She was the underdog in that one. Former title challenger at strawweight. So really looking forward to that fight. The one that's kind of caught Matt's attention and a former guest of the show, Gary Tonin taking on Yoshihiko Nakahara. It should be a good one. What can you tell us about Tonin's opponent, Nakahara?
He's won 8 fights in a row, and he is a monster. He's won his last 2 by stoppage. It's definitely a step up in competition for Tonin. We saw him get the win over...
Anthony Anglin.
Thank you. His name evaded me. Who is a really talented guy, but he had just come off a loss not too far back by stoppage too, so maybe not the best version of him, but this is finally where you get to see what Gary Tonin's all about. Like, is he still prospect status or is he contender status? If he gets the win, I would assume they give him a title shot next, just because it seems like that's what they're building towards. So, really big fight for Gary Tonin. I definitely favor him. We've seen his striking looks legit, even though he's a grappler by trade. So, it'll definitely be a fun fight, but I definitely have Gary Tonin.
And a lot of fun fights below 155, especially in the next one. Alex Silva taking on Yoshitaka Naito. That's going to be a fun one there. We were having a look at some of the kickboxing fights on this one. Of course, there's a Grand Prix going on. Andy Sauer, one of the best kickboxers in the world. He's out due to injury. That's kind of some developing news there at 155, so keep that one in mind when you're paying attention to this one. You've also got Jihei Eustaquio taking on Kyo Sung Kim. That one's at 135, a fun fight there. You've got the non-boxing Amir Khan. He's fighting on this card. But
Super Sage makes his return.
One of the biggest ones, Super Sage taking on Cosmo Alexandra. And for the opponent of Sage Northcutt, Mr. Cosmo hasn't lost a fight since his debut, so he's won 7 in a row. He's looked really good.
Multiple-time world kickboxing champion.
Yeah, and 2 decision wins on there, peppered in with 5 finishes, so it should be a good one there.
I feel like Sage is going to lose.
I think Sage is going to be able to get the win there just because we saw in his fight against Zach Otto a guy who's incredibly wrestling
and
heavy
has no cardio
versus a kickboxer. Sage Northcutt was able to reverse out of some positions and do, relatively well. In this one, he's going to be taking a stand-up fighter, so you have to kind of give him the advantage there. He's going to have a more well-rounded game.
The difference is he doesn't use his grappling. So it means it's going to be on the feet. So if I'm a 10 out of 10 on the feet, you're an 8 out of 10 on the feet, maybe 2 out of 10 on the ground. But we never go to the ground. It doesn't matter. I'm still better on the feet.
I've got Northcutt in this one. Another fight that's on this card, very, very close to the top, one that Matt and I are really paying attention to, whether or not we're up that early. I'm going to be working. But Giorgio Petrosian, one of the best kickboxers to ever do it. And I know Bazooka Joe Valtellini was throwing out a first pitch to Blue Jays game this week. But Giorgio Petrosian, you got to watch him in that fight. Nikki Holskin also on this card, but the main event, a great one. You had Shinya Aoki winning the belt incredibly recently. That was on that really big card with Eddie Alvarez, Demetrius Johnson, among others. Taking on Christian Lee, who, unless you slam somebody forward and knock them out, he's one of the best in one, especially at 170, which is their lightweight division, if you will. So that's a really, really fun fight and one that we're definitely looking forward to. Great energy carried on.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there's not much more I can add to it.
No, it's a really good one. And as far as KSW 49 is concerned, entire card is totally stacked. From, even the first fight, Mikhail Dubois taking on Leszek Krakowski. Krakowski 13-1 taking on Dubois, who's 10-6. We've seen a lot of good French fighters come up here recently. Saladin Palnas is a guy that we've been really high on. But to go through this card, Michael Andrazik, who recently fought for KSW's heavyweight title, it was in that vacant fight against Phil DeFries when Phil took the belt, taking on Luis Enrique, a guy who, Matt, we know him from the UFC, but what can you kind of tell us about Luis Enrique?
I know he's no longer in the UFC, mainly due to his performances. He got knocked out by Ngannou. A lot of people remember that from that big uppercut that Ngannou landed. He tried to drop down to 205, I remember. He lost that fight. And then he got cut from the UFC. It's nice to see him back in a major organization, though. He was definitely one of those guys who always had a lot of talent, but he could never kind of put everything together. So hopefully he could kind of, go on a run and maybe come back one day. But, KSW is a great promotion anyways. So you don't really need to come back.
Especially at heavyweight. It's a stacked division there already. And, for me to say it's stacked, it's one of the better heavyweight divisions. With Bellator, you get that Legends category. So there's a lot of big names. With the UFC, you've got the breadth of a division. It's all right. Here, it's a lot of fun. We're going to talk about some of the more fun fights.
Division.
But yeah, it's entertaining, but there are some good fights. So moving forward, Artur Savinsky taking on Norman Park. Savinsky, former champ in KSW. Norman Park fought in the UFC.
Tied to a fight with Benson Henderson not overly long.
Won his debut, which a lot of people were kind of a little shifty in how that one went down. But looking forward to that one. It should be a really competitive fight. They have it set at 163.
You guys might remember Thiago Silva in the next fight from failing multiple drug tests in North America.
Won his last fight in KSW. He's taking on Martin Zavada. So it should be a good one there. Another really intriguing one. Paul Politio taking on Antun Rakic. Rakic has looked great recently.
Brother of Alexander.
Politio Tuwo. Apologies,
Not
KSW bad. Fans. 4-1. Akop Stozak taking on Erko UNC. That's the one. So these guys are never, ever in your wildest dreams going to compete for a KSW heavyweight title. But they're fun fights nonetheless, and ones you should look forward to. Carol Bador, former champ, 265, coming off a loss. He's taking on Damian Grabowski.
Another former UFC vet.
Yeah, this is a fun one because Bador lost his last fight back in October. That was against Phil DeFries for the title. Damian Grabowski, 21-5, and like Matt said, from the UFC,
he's not great.
Left on 3 losses. Derek Lewis, the freight train, 50-50. Anthony Hamilton got knocked out in 14 seconds and somehow got an even better opponent in his next fight in Chase Sherman.
Still got his ass kicked.
Yeah, and then he ended up winning a fight after that. In your co-main event, you've got a fight for the 170 title, and they're not going to have the trilogy fight all that quick with Dricus du Plessis, who had to come out of his last fight due to injury, so that one didn't happen. You've got Roberto Soldic taking on Christian Kazubowski, 7-0. Soldic, man, is legit, and if you were to make it to the UFC, I would watch out for USADA, but at the same time, man, he is strong as all hell.
Yeah, he is.
He can take a punch, he can give a punch. That's a really fun fight. If you're watching MMA this weekend, if you're watching MMA this weekend, this one's Saturday morning in North America on the East Coast. Watch out for that fight. And then in your main event, you've got the culmination of the 4-man tournament for the vacant middleweight title. Of course, when you had the man, the one and only,
Mamed Khalidov.
KSW's biggest star, Mamed Khalidov, he vacated that title to have those 2 fights against Tomasz Narkun. So you've got Michael Materla taking on Scott Askham. A lot of people are going to recognize Askham from his time in the UFC, but it's a really fun fight there. Materla, 27-6.
And KSW is always a ton of fun. Like, it's one of those organizations that you just wish would get more of a global audience, I guess, because, it's very much the pride of Europe. It's worth checking out if you never have before.
The pride of Europe. That's a good way to put it.
Pride is in a way of like, oh, it's really good in Europe. Like, it's like Pride FC was. It's really exciting.
A lot of fun there. So, we'll get into it. We'll give you our predictions, some of the fun fights, some of the things that we're looking at with the UFC. All right, so really looking forward to KSW 49, but in the grand scheme of things, the card that most people are looking forward to, UFC on ESPN Plus, Dos Anjos taking on Kevin Lee. It's a half-decent card. Matt, we're about a week away from this one taking place, but if you had to give this card a letter grade, just off the bat, what would you give it?
Now, there's going to be, I don't know, there's a bit of a, I don't really know. Like, this fight, name-wise, doesn't have a lot of great fighters on it, but I do really feel like you're going to have multiple fights that could be that fight of the night. I would probably give it a C just off name recognition, but there's a really good chance that by next week we'll be talking about this card as one of the more exciting of the weekend. I mean, there's fights like Ian Heinisch and Antonio Carlos Jr. I think that's going to be amazing. Neil Magny, Vicente Luque. I think the main event could be really good too. Like, there's a lot of fights that, if they do play out a certain way, they could definitely be fight of the night.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. A C, even maybe a C minus. There's not a whole lot of name recognition on this card. It's taking place in Rochester, New York. We've seen some of these New York cards. If it's not in the New York area, if it's not MSG or Barclays.
If it's in a place like Utica.
If it's in Utica, I mean, I'm looking forward to Rochester, but you gotta have those fans show up because it's not a great look. Some of these fights are fun, but a fight like Patrick Cummins, Ed Herman, it's not really going to turn a lot of heads.
That's a drinking fight right there.
It's not going to turn a lot of heads. So if we have a look at the card, as far as the odds are concerned, and some of the more fun fights, if we look at the bottom of it, Julio Arce taking on Julian Rosa. That's a fun fight.
Julio Arce is a massive favorite for a reason, though. I mean,
I mean, Julian Rosa, second stint with the UFC, hasn't gone all that great so far. Julio Arce is one of those guys that, I mean, Julio Arce, Dan Ige, they just stay burned in my mind. They're two guys at 145 that are a lot of fun to watch. I think Arce has definitely a higher ceiling than Rosa does. Coming off of, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, he's fought a couple of times. Hasn't looked all that great out there, but like you said, Arce about a 5-1 favorite. About a week out from this fight. Michel Pereira taking on Danny Roberts. Hot chocolate, bitchin' nickname. I'm looking forward to this fight. I mean, Danny Roberts is more than a 2-1 favorite. He's a minus 250 at this point. Does it make sense to you?
It does to a certain degree. I mean, Pereira, we've seen before. He really likes to go for the takedown. He likes to miss weight, too.
Yes, he does.
But I think it's definitely going to be a tough fight. I would give Danny Roberts the favor. Yeah, I think it's justified.
So, Pereira, if you've ever seen him fight, and I think you were thinking Michel Prazeres.
Definitely was.
Pereira is the guy from Road FC that did moonsaults off the cage and stomped on his opponents. He's kind of an absolute wild man.
He did that jumping sidekick.
If I were not involved with the MMA JA, I would bet my house on him.
Really?
I would almost bet, and you can go back way back to when Danny Roberts fought David Zavada, and I said that was fight of the night, and it was fight of the night. This is your fight of the night because this guy is going to be fighting for his life.
I disagree.
And he's going to go balls to the wall. Danny Roberts, his stand-up's good, but his defensive wrestling is really good too, and we saw that in that Zavada fight. That's what won it for him. You can see the vein in my neck's going nuts.
Yeah, Craig's freaking out.
I'm super excited about this fight. This is going to be my fight of the night. You've also got Desmond Green taking on Charles Jourdain. He's coming over from TKO, making his UFC debut at 9-1.
Desmond Green was a quick turnaround after knocking out Ross Pearson, too.
Really quick turnaround. He's also a minus 500 favorite, which is absolutely insane.
It is, but Desmond Green's not flashy. He wins fights, though. He's very much like the Elias Theodoro of the lightweight division. He's going to outpoint you. It's a little bit more exciting than Elias, but still, he's more of a point guy. I do think he'll win. I don't think that'll be the most exciting fight in the world.
One of the really fun fights is actually on this card, and some people might grumble about it, but Aspen Ladd taking on Sijara
It's a
Eubanks.
rematch, too.
Sarge moving up to 135, and you look at her record, if you're just a casual fan and you've made it this far, congrats, and we appreciate you. But Sijara Eubanks at 4-2 as a pro, this is going to be an unfair comparison, but look at Rose Namajunas right now. 8-4 as a pro. For somebody that's a total casual, for somebody that just watches the really big pay-per-views, you were to see somebody with a record like that, you might think, hey, they're not very good. Sijara Eubanks is, divide Rose's record by 2, and you get Sijara Eubanks' record. So simple math right there, but Eubanks is a great fighter.
She's going to get killed by Aspen Ladd, though. That's what Craig's setting up. Aspen Ladd's just a bigger, better version of Sijara Eubanks. Aspen Ladd beat the brakes off poor Tanya Evinger. Like, she beat her worse than Cyborg did. Sijara Eubanks has 0% chance of winning that fight. Aspen Ladd, TKO, ground and pound, round 1.
I think Aspen Ladd's going to do quite well. I think it's going to be more fun of a fight than that. You also have Austin Hubbard taking on Davi Ramos. Ramos is good all over the place. If you look at Austin Hubbard's record, he was able to get a 5th round finish in his last fight. He's on a 3-fight win streak. And you look at it, I mean, LFA, he did quite well there. Former lightweight champ, won the vacant belt in his last fight there. It should be a fun one. If you look at the odds, Davi Ramos, almost a 5-1 favorite in that one, so it makes sense to me. The odds so far right now are really far apart compared to last week. I wrote an article, FightNightPicks.net, about some of the odds, and Raoni Barcelos, he was, furthest odds. I think he was over a minus 1,000 favorite in that fight. But yeah, I mean, there's some more fun fights.
The next one's the fight of your night, though. This is one that I really want to talk about. Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz is going to be your fight of the night. I'm going to say this because Charles Oliveira in his last run just doesn't care. Like, he throws crazy spinning elbows. He has really good stand-up lately. He doesn't really care who he fights. And if the fight goes to the ground, he's going to choke it no matter who he fights. Now, this is a rematch of a fight that happened before where I believe Nick Lentz
won by guillotine. Yeah. But that was 4 years ago. Exactly. So we finally get this one. If you look at Nick Lentz, he's won his last 2 fights, which is insane to think that he fought Gray Maynard recently.
Badly.
Then he beat Scott Holtzman. In this one, yeah, I mean, as far as the odds are concerned, you've got Charles Oliveira as almost a 4-1 favorite. Like, these odds are nuts.
No, he's going to win by rear naked choke.
But yeah, I've got the Bronx as well. Megan Anderson taking on Felicia Spencer. We haven't seen Megan Anderson in a hot second.
We did, but not for that very long. I mean, she towed Kat in the eye, and that was about it.
Yeah, exactly. So she gets the win there. Before that, it was a loss to Holly Holm.
That's a terrible
I think if they had a rematch with Kat Zingano, I believe I took Zingano before that fight. I would take Zingano in that one again, just based on the role she was on. Kind of a freak injury there.
The role that Zingano was on?
I mean, she beat Marion Renault. She looked really good.
No, she didn't, though.
She was rolling. And her wrestling's great. Her wrestling's great. But regardless, she's taking on Felicia Spencer. Megan Anderson is. Spencer's 6-0. It's hard not to be biased. You've got the Canadian here, and her nickname's the Phenom. She beat Pam Sorensen, who's a legit opponent to win the vacant featherweight championship over in Invicta. Peppering wins with finishes and decisions. I think she's going to be able to get it done here just based on the well-roundedness and the fact that her wrestling's quite good and her ground game's very good.
If Megan Anderson can get out-wrestled by Holly Holm, she's going to get out-wrestled by Felicia Spencer. I would take Spencer by submission, rear naked choke. Maybe she gets ground and pound. I don't think that fight goes to the judges. I do think Felicia's going to win a pretty one-sided fight.
Yeah, and I've got Felicia Spencer in that one as well. One of those other fun fights at 185, you got Antonio Carlos Jr., better known as Shoeface, taking on Ian Heinisch.
The drug smuggler.
Ian Heinisch is a great fighter.
He is.
If you didn't know him, go back, watch his last UFC fight, which was his UFC debut. He looked great there. Shoeface's jiu-jitsu is insane.
Off the charts.
It's so good. This is a really fun fight. I don't really have my mind made up so far. As far as the odds are concerned, Shoeface, kind of a favorite, close to a 2-1 here so far. I'm sure those odds are probably going to get closer together as the week goes on. But man, this is a fun one, and I could see either guys winning this one. It's a flip of the coin.
I can never pick for Antonio Carlos Jr. because he got knocked out by Dan Kelly. And for some reason, that sticks out in my mind so badly. And it's unfair to Antonio Carlos Jr. I can admit that. I know he's a phenomenal fighter. He's got wicked jiu-jitsu. But it's just for some reason that sticks in the back of my head. If Dan Kelly can knock you out, Ian Heinisch can knock you out.
He's one of those guys, like an OAM, like a Gilbert Burns. He's just got to bring everything together. I know he's a specialist in jiu-jitsu,
yes,
but he's just got to bring everything together.
The difference is, though, Gilbert Burns has legit stand-up. He can hurt you on the feet, then he takes you back and chokes you out. Antonio Carlos Jr. is very awkward on his feet. He doesn't have a good flow. He doesn't have big power like a guy like Gilbert Burns. He has good wrestling, great jiu-jitsu. But unless he needs the fight to go to the floor, I don't think I'm telling you guys anything you don't know. I would say Heinisch by first-round knockout, but if he can't get it, it's going to be all Antonio Carlos Jr.
In the co-main event, one of the fights that I know Matt's looking forward to. Now, Matt, you shone a spotlight on Vicente Luque forever.
Riding, as some men would say, in the MMA industry.
He's taking on Neil Magny, and Neil Magny is one of those guys that's quite inconsistent. If you look at the odds, Neil Magny is
plus 400.
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, realistically, I just said he's inconsistent, but I don't think I would want to bet against him. You look at the losses. So going back to 2015, got submitted by Damian Maia, got knocked out by Lorenz Larkin before Lorenz left for Bellator, lost by submission to RDA, and then he got knocked out by Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Anytime he fights a high-level guy, he tends to lose by stoppage. Vicente Luque, if you've ever seen him fight before, he's extremely violent. A lot of people remember from his last fight against Brian Barberena, the one fight of the night, probably going to be fight of the year. And he finishes everybody. None of his fights in the UFC, none of his wins, have been by decision. All of them have been by stoppage, either Darce choke, Anaconda choke, knockout, Darce, knockout.
Yeah, and his only loss was a decision to the decision master, Leon Roberts, a guy whose boxing is great.
Not Roberts.
Sorry, not Leon Roberts.
I would say Vicente Luque by stoppage. I don't know how, because he's very well-rounded with the submissions or knockout. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, Neil Magny's not a terrible underdog pick, just due to the fact that he could out-wrestle Vicente, possibly, but there's a good chance Vicente goes in there, leg kick.
And that's the thing with Neil Magny. Range, you would think would be a strong suit.
Oh, yeah.
It is not at all.
It's like Stefan Struve with the welterweights.
Yeah, he's super, super long, and he has great cardio, and you did see that if you go back and watch the Hector Lombard fight. He just, ate a ton of punishment, waited till the second round, and then just kind of gassed.
Well, it's like the Kelvin Gastelum fight, too. I mean, that went 5 rounds. It was fight of the night. The difference was he looked great early, and then Kelvin looked great late. It's just Neil can go 5 hard rounds. I do think Vicente finishes them, though, and that hurts to say, because I do like Neil Magny.
And then in your main event, a fight that's almost kind of silly that it's a main event, just because of the recent track record of these two guys. Rafael dos Anjos, your former lightweight champ, taking on Kevin Lee, the Motown Phenom. And, Motown Phenom, it's really sad when you look at his story of late. Like, Robert Follis really became a focal point of his training camp. And then he lost his coach and his mentor.
But now he's got, what's his name?
He's got Dewey Cooper ripping off the sleeve.
Forgot the name. He's terrible.
Dewey Cooper, as good of a striking coach as he is, as an all-around MMA coach, we haven't really seen him have a great track record. You see Francis Ngannou left him, left the Performance Institute. He's been using his guys over in France. You look at Kevin Lee in his last 3 fights. So he had the interim title shot at lightweight. Lost to Tony Ferguson. You can blame the weight cut. You can blame the staph infection. Excuses are excuses. Then he fought Edson Barboza, and he beat him. And
he looked amazing.
He looked great in that fight.
With that wheel kick.
And then he fought Al Iaquinta, and I don't know what his game plan was.
Al is a bad MFer.
It was trash.
I think they were taking too much away from Al Iaquinta. Al Iaquinta is the perfect guy to fight a heavy wrestler because he has really good takedown defense, and his stand-up's better than wrestlers, but maybe not as good as like the top guys like a Cowboy or Poirier. So I do think, saying that, RDA is going to beat Kevin Lee pretty handily.
So we look at RDA's record, and I mean, if we go all the way back, so he lost his title to Eddie Alvarez, then he lost to Tony Ferguson, beats Tarek Saffiedine, which I think that was like the last time we saw Tarek Saffiedine. Beats Neil Magny, beats Robbie Lawler, and when he beat Robbie Lawler in Winnipeg, I went, whoa.
He looked great.
I mean, he's so much smaller than Robbie Lawler, a guy who was a 185 champ. Like, he was legit at 85. And a former champ in the UFC at 170.
Not a champ at 185, but anyways.
Caliber. Let's say caliber. Either way, Colby Covington, he loses the decision.
Close fight.
It was close, but he got out-wrestled. Then he fought
Usman whooped that ass.
another great wrestler.
Usman beat the fuck out of him.
And now he's going to fight a good wrestler
Who's smaller.
So I think RDA, a more well-rounded guy. You look at it, a guy who trains with Ruka Sport, who trains with Kings. He's going to have that strength of schedule, a great camp. Kevin Lee, he's going to have good guys to train with in Vegas, whether he's training with Cooper. You know, you could be at Mayweather's gym for boxing. You could go to Extreme Couture a little bit where he had the affiliation. His brother's also a fighter in MMA competing with Brave. There's a lot of good people to train with there. I just think that RDA, the specialization, the point in his career, another main event, he usually shines in these spots except for his last two fights. I've got RDA in this one, and if you look at those odds, they're par right now. They really are. So you can't make a bad choice, but I think we both have RDA in this one.
Yeah, and I have RDA mainly due to the fact that let's say Kevin Lee does out-wrestle him for those first 2 rounds, because I feel like that's almost the blueprint to beat RDA. Like, you have to out-wrestle him, because if not, he's going to just outpace you, outwork you, probably get a stoppage later on. Kevin Lee hasn't shown the cardio to go 5 hard rounds. He can
Except for in the Barboza fight.
But in the Barboza fight, he fought at his range the whole time, and he fought at his pace the whole time. So he kind of got to pace himself throughout the 5 rounds. RDA is not going to give you that opportunity. Even if you are better than him at wrestling, he has better takedown defense than a guy like Edson Barboza. I just think RDA, he might win a decision. I don't know if he'll get the stoppage because Kevin Lee is pretty durable, but I would not be surprised in the least bit if RDA got the stoppage win. I'll say TKO round 3.
Yeah, I think RDA is going to be able to get it done. I think it's going to be a submission. I mean, it's tough to try and tell from right now, but you could see that Lee's really been focusing on that striking ability. RDA, really well-rounded guy. You have to kind of know what his game plan is going to be, but a fighter like that, it's tough to game plan for, and we saw it in Lee's last fight. Who knows what his game plan was against Iaquinta, but he really wasn't able to get anything mounted or anything done.
Yeah, he just tried to strike with Iaquinta like it wasn't a great idea.
No, especially against his specialty. So it should be a good fight. It could be a possible fight of the night. We saw it with the UFC where the main event was the fight of the night, and a performance bonus was also given to Andrade on top of that.
The ESPN era has had nothing but good main events if you go back. I mean, they've all been stoppages, I'm pretty sure. So
Exactly. So looking forward to those cards, extensive breakdowns. We're going to bring you more coverage on Twitter as the week goes on. You can find me at Craig Allen FNP on Twitter, at Matt Allen FNP on Twitter. And the last part of the show, our highlights and our lowlights of the week. So if we're going to focus on some highlights, I've already picked mine out. It's the Old Town Road. It's TJ Jones. The guy showed up. He got mollywopped by Jake Hager, Jack Swagger, held onto the choke way too long. I'm pretty sure Mike Beltran probably stared into his soul after that happened. That was ridiculous. And as far as Jake Hager, he's my low light of the week. I mean, you get a highlight and a low light all in one, but it was crazy how that happened. Hager's 37 years old, so the window's kind of closing at heavyweight. Usually it's a little long, but I mean, that was only his second pro MMA fight. And I don't know if he's really translating as far as, anything's concerned. He's not a co-main yet. He's on those main cards, and there's probably some crossover. He's still doing the We the People WWE thing, which is kind of cool. Whatever. You got to kind of play on it, although you switched your name. But yeah, highlight, TJ Jones. Looks like he's going to get another fight with Bellator, which is great. And Jake Hager, get your act together, buddy.
Yeah, I'm going to go a bit of a different route. I'm going to say highlight of the weekend was definitely Douglas Lima almost killing MVP. He punched his ticket to the finals of the welterweight Grand Prix. Probably going to earn that $1 million. Still didn't drink the champagne with 50 Cent. 50. Quit trying to make him drink. But the low light of the week is definitely BJ Penn still fighting. Hey, BJ, you've lost 7 in a row. You haven't won in 9 years. It's probably time to hang it up. And I know it's tough because BJ, every time he comes back, because he's like the Brett Favre of MMA, every time he comes back, he's just like, I don't know what to do outside of fighting, which is unfortunate. Like, you wish that he had another avenue to pursue. But it's time to hang it up. A lot of those old guys. Anderson, same thing. Little Nog. Let's just call her a day.
Yeah, so on that note, again, thanks so much for joining us. Toss us a like and a sub so you can subscribe for more great content. We're going to be around quite a bit more. I've been traveling 3 out of the last 4 weeks, so it's been really tough to try and follow the sport and also get our live content out there. So there's a lot of great fight cards this weekend. Hopefully you can check out one championship. You got KSW 49 on Saturday. And of course, you got the big card on Saturday night, Lee versus Dos Anjos. So make sure you find us, sportsboot.tv, over on YouTube, at Craig Allen, at Matt Allen,